Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, we're going to discuss the aftermath of President Trump's arrest and how this is playing specifically into the next iteration of American history and what we can expect coming from this. Also, there's an interesting coincidence this week with something else that was major and seminal as far as an event that happened in American history over 30 years ago, and that is Ruby Ridge. So for those of you, I can't believe that people don't know about Waco and Ruby Ridge, but these are big deals, and the fact that President Trump's arrest happened the same week of the anniversary of Ruby Ridge and in the same timeline, to me, is not a coincidence. Friends, the crisis that we have in government on all levels, both on the national level and state governments as well, and the absolute tyrannical hold that the left has in bastions of liberalism, namely their cities, this is coming to a breaking point. And there's a take-home factor here. If a president of the United States, say what you will about him, but if you read the charges and you look at the case that they've put together, it is just, it's laughable. And yet, they're still having their way. And yet, people are still believing that somehow that they have justice in this nation and that they're going to get justice from a court system. The courts are so polarized at this point that American people have no incentive to comply. If there's a take-home from this, it's that you're not going to get justice from any elected body of government. You're not going to get it from them. If you've ever had an encounter with the legal system, you know, because it's not a justice system. It's not justice. It's a legal system. If you've ever had an encounter with the legal system, you know it's not how much justice you get, it's what you can afford. And essentially, attorneys and people who are part of that power structure, it costs them nothing to ruin people's lives. It costs them nothing to file frivolous lawsuits. It costs them nothing to drag people's names through the mud and destroy everything that they've worked for. It costs them nothing, and because they have the power of the judicial branch with them, they have an asymmetrical ability to move without opposition. The only way that a person can hope to get any type of justice in their system is never to go into their clutches in the first place. Jeffrey Epstein found that one out. Going into their custody, unless you are a super high profile individual, is not a winning strategy for success. So this is what I anticipate as the aftermath of all this begins to unfold. People have a crisis of confidence in everything from the federal government. I see them self-selecting out of the process. The Republican Party is about to go the way of the Whigs. It is sinking fast into irrelevancy, effectively because it alienated its base and it separated itself from its principles. It couldn't even define what its principles are, other than let's get everybody every so often into war and go and expand our empire and drive people's taxes up. It's definitely not the party of low taxes. Forget that. That is not a thing. It was the same party, when you think about it, that expanded Homeland Security, that gave us the Patriot Act, that got us 2 useless wars with a whole bunch of Americans and God knows how many civilians killed in these areas. For what? For nothing. For nothing. So they stand for nothing. And so the one person who's an outsider, and for those of you who follow me, I am not a Trump fan. I have not been. I will support when somebody does something constitutionally, I'll support them for it, but if they do something that ain't right, then I'm going to call it out. And there have been things that I did not like about former President Trump. Definitely the bump stock ban. That was a big one. And some of his other things that he said and postures about lack of due process, just take the guns and we'll deal with due process later, that sort of thing. So I am not dyed in the wool for a person, and I'm not a subscriber to the cult of personality, but I know when right is right and wrong is wrong. And this stuff that's going on down in Atlanta is straight up screwed up. So what's the next step? People are not going to comply anymore. Don't you find it odd that all of this happened in the same week as the 31st anniversary of Ruby Ridge? Do you know what Ruby Ridge was? Does anybody remember that? Anybody remember seeing all this unfold? You cannot trust these people to give you any type of justice. They are utterly and thoroughly corrupt. They stand for nothing but themselves and the perpetuation of their own power. So what I see ultimately is people say, you know what? You're taking my money. You're sending all of our money over to Ukraine. Meanwhile, people can't pay for stuff here. You're printing our money into oblivion. You're arresting people who did nothing wrong. You're arresting the most popular president in recent history over some BS charges because some uppity woman in Atlanta wants to make a name for herself. Please. People have no incentive to comply anymore in a system that's broken. So what I see coming as a result of this is mass disobedience, civil and uncivil. Used to be would say, civil disobedience. Why would you be civil with somebody who is being uncivil with you? Why would you be civil with the same entities that brought you Waco and Ruby Ridge? Why would you be civil with them? Why would you comply with them? Why would you do anything that they say when they're willing to drag somebody and like Sidney Powell and like several other people, they're willing to put them through all of this misery for what? Political positioning. These people are vile and wicked. They are the depth of depravity. The depth of depravity that our founding fathers warned us about that we would eventually sink to when we had forsaken God and when we had forsaken national piety and ultimately when the size of government had grown to an unsustainable level. We're there. We're definitely there. I've heard it said, maybe y'all could leave me a comment. I've heard it said that various statistical models and mathematical models are projecting that, I want to say I had a student in class who told me that it was approximately a 70% chance that we wouldn't even have an election coming up. I could definitely see that. A crisis of their own making. But I anticipate that this is just going to be the beginning of a spark. They desperately need a way to control people. In my opinion, they're keeping Biden alive just insofar as they can keep him pumped up to pull the plug at an opportune time. I had a dream about that. I'm not normally a dreaming sort of person, but I had a dream about that Biden was effectively being kept alive by chemical cocktails, and that at an appropriate time when they needed a crisis, right? A crisis, that magically he just poof, this guy who's supposedly in perfect health, like please. So I anticipate that there's going to be some significant change in momentum here. People's backs are against the wall and they're at a point where they have nothing left to lose, where their dollar isn't buying anything, when they can't afford to put a roof over their heads, when their homes are being swallowed up by out-of-state money, developers, Airbnbs, large like mega corporations buying stuff. The little guy right now, and the average person has seen his wealth destroyed and his purchasing power destroyed because of central banks, foreign intrigues, leftists, and all of the ilk that they have brought in and imported from the leftovers of the world over the past 30 years. It's coming home to roost, guys. So I don't see that this is going to go well for them. What I see is mass disobedience on the part of people. When you see that justice has been corrupted and perverted at the most fundamental levels, listen, if the foundations be shaken, what can the righteous do? What shall the righteous do? Unjust weights and measures are an abomination to God. What's the symbol? What's the symbol that's held up in courtrooms and in pictures depicting justice? The blind scale holder, right? Unjust weights and measures. We have an epidemic of unjust weights and measures. This is a demonic thing, and it has its power from a very, 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 very dark place in this universe. And it deserves to be opposed. The federal government and institutions that they support and bodies of government that support this wickedness and this perversion of justice, they're not going to stand. They're not going to stand. They have their moment, but ultimately they're burned up like chaff. But the Lord's justice lasts forever. His laws last forever. And I see that ultimately people are getting to a point where they're so desperate and where all of these preconceived notions of norms are being taken away from them that they have very little left to lose. And I can't say I blame people for it. Whether it's a dude getting in a shootout in Pittsburgh because he doesn't want to be evicted from his home, or little bit by little bit, people just not complying, whether it's with taxes or whether it's any number of things. We are headed for some major turmoil here. And I'm not surprised about it. I am more resolute now to maintain my freedom, because I can tell you, unless you are a high-profile individual, and unless you have cameras on you at every second of the day, going into any government custody is the most dangerous place that you could possibly be. There is no justice with them. It's about money and power. Money and power. And because they have no justice, they have no legitimacy. They have shifted from their mandate, which was to safeguard the rights of the people, and instead have become the single greatest oppressor of American citizens. Any entity that does that is not owed your allegiance, or your respect, or your compliance. They are only legitimate insofar as they safeguard the rights and liberties of the people and of their property, and ultimately do not defy the law of nature and nature's God. I can't say that any of that is true for them anymore. I'm just holding on to watch this thing. I know how it ends. In the grand scheme of things, I know how it ends. But the wicked are going to have their day. And the people are rising up. The people are becoming more aware of their abuses, and they have less and less to lose by resisting them. So we'll see. This is a big deal for a former president to have to go through all this. It's fairly unprecedented. There have been some isolated incidents throughout history, but the move overall is fairly unprecedented, certainly for a former president who is as popular as he is, let alone a potential candidate again. We're going to see. Hope the video was helpful for y'all today. If you enjoyed it, I hope you'll subscribe to me here on YouTube, Patriot Nurse. You can also stay with me and support me on Patreon, Subscribestar, Cryptocurrency, and PayPal. I got links below. My confidence is not in any governmental institution, whether state or federal or local. My confidence is in the Lord God Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth. To him and him alone will I swear fealty and allegiance, to no other entity. And it takes that type of faith undergirding defiance. Our founding fathers had it. Our founding fathers had it. They were willing to stare down their own deaths in the face because they had a bigger picture of what was right. Fortunately, we've let them down. We've really let them down. And we dragged their sacrifices through the mud so that we could be comfortable and so we could have security. But it's turning. It's turning now. And we'll just watch it play out. Have a blessed weekend, y'all. May the Lord bless and keep you all. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.